Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the SQLBase webinar. Thank you for taking the time to attend today's webinar on automating database administration. I'm your host and presenter, Martin Tietz, and I will talk about the automating database administration features of SQLBase and also give you detailed demonstrations of these features that are available in SQLBase. Before we start, just a few things about Unify. Unify is has more than 30 years experience in the development tools and database products area. We have several first products like Data Server, the first Unix SQL database, Excel, the first Unix 4GL, that's quite some time ago, SQLBase, first DOS and Windows SQL database, SQL Windows, the first Windows 4GL program, and Team Developer, the first Windows 32-bit 4GL. Other things this company does is eDiscovery, a company called Dagis eDiscovery. If you're interested in that, please go to www.dagis.com for details on electronic discovery solutions. Composer solutions are Unify services and products that allow you to migrate from one platform to another, and that includes for Composer for Lotus Notes, which is a Notes apps to ASP.NET apps conversion solution or service. Composer CipherSoft is the same for Oracle Forms to Java applications. So if you do have Oracle Forms or Java or Notes that you want to migrate to other platforms, contact us at info@unify.com. Archiving is another division of ours. Access One offers enterprise archiving solutions, communications archiving, application archiving, log management, easy case management. To see details, go to www.accessone.com. So far for the quick overview of Unify. Now let's go into the details of what I'm going to talk about today. I will introduce the command center of SQLBase. I will show you how you set up and configure the command center service, which is part of the command center. I will show you how you configure the email notification options of the command center, so you can get notification emails in case of errors or in case of executed tasks. I will tell you what administration tasks can be automated. I will show you how you define tasks and the steps of a task. I will demonstrate how you do SQL Execute tasks. I will demo how you define and run shell script tasks. And I will demo how you set up an automated backup system that includes all the backup options that SQLBase has. And then, of course, there's question and answers. And I would like to ask you to put the questions that you have into the WebEx Q&A tool. I might answer them during the webinar or the latest at the end of the webinar in the Q&A session. So SQLBase really is a low admin effort database, but a few things a SQLBase user should be doing or a SQLBase admin should be doing really is backup and these things, and so we will concentrate on pretty much on that in this webinar. SQLBase Command Center, what can you do with that? It allows very easy access to all database maintenance tasks. An easy to use, very intuitive GUI. You will see that in a few minutes. You can automate recurring database tasks such as backups, unloads, data transfers, things like whatever you want to do with databases. Then there's also a pretty big part in SQLBase Command Center that allows you to drill down database performance and find what queries, for example, are bringing down your server performance. And you can resolve those issues by finding the query and then maybe creating appropriate indices so that your queries run faster. Database troubleshooting, what kind of problems do exist, how you can resolve those. And SQLBase Command Center basically integrates all the existing previous maintenance tools in one single application, and that is SQL Console, SQL Talk, and the Connectivity Administrator, all in one nice GUI package. So the first thing that you have to do if you work with SQLBase Command Center is you have to do the service configuration. And to do that, you go to the ribbon bar and click on Task Service Administration, and that dialog box that you see on the left side opens up. There you click on the Task Database tab. You just select the SB Task Database that comes with SQLBase when you install it. And on the Service tab, then you go ahead and configure that database as a server. To do that, you need to run Command Center as administrator, at least on from Windows Vista on. So Vista and Windows 7 require you to be administrator or be in administrator mode when you start and stop services. So if you go in there, you say, you define the start type automatic, so that service will get started every time your machine boots, and press the apply button, and then the service is active, and you can start configuring and creating tasks that have several steps and that will be scheduled and then executed at the scheduled times. The SQLBase Command Center service queries the SB task database every minute to look for tasks to execute. So there's one little ping to the database every minute to see what tasks have to be executed at that time. And if there's a task, then it will execute that task. And this little screenshot that did show up at the bottom now is basically a screenshot of the Windows service list. And you see the SQLBase Manager service. That's the SQLBase Command Center service that looks into the SB task database to find out what tasks have to be executed. And then SQLBase Command Center includes something which is sending emails on errors or sending emails on any action, basically on any task that is being executed. This is SMTP email, and you have to provide some configuration details on that. You open the SMTP settings from the SB task database on the left side tree below the administration tree item. There's a menu item called SMTP settings. You provide the access details for the SMTP email service or server, which looks like this for me. You might need a user and password. You need to get that from your network administrators. So you can have SQLBase Command Center send automated emails. And for that, Command Center itself doesn't need to run. Only the service needs to be active on the machine. And then one step further is the email operator. You can have multiple email operators that define tasks and have run automated tasks. You basically go to the operator tree item, click on new element, and then you get a dialog where you can provide the operator name and the email address. So basically that's the send to address of myself, and I will get status emails from the Command Center service when tasks have executed. So enter the operator name, enter your email address. The status emails will be sent as defined by the email operator. And the email operator can be set per task in task definition. So you can have a daily backup that if that fails, you send an email to a certain person, and you can have a daily unload of a database, and if that fails, an email goes to a different person, for example, just in case you want to have something like that. Automated database administration. What are the capabilities in that area? You can schedule tasks either daily, weekly, or monthly. That's the granularity that you get from us. You can do things like backup, unload, load. You can execute SQL scripts, SQL commands. You can also execute shell scripts, and you will see in the demonstration later that executing shell scripts is actually a very powerful feature that allows you to do basically anything in regard to database administration. And then there's another feature. You can not only schedule tasks, but you can also force these tasks to execute now, which I will use a lot in this demonstration. So I don't have to schedule them because we don't have a lot of time in that webinar. That's just easier to use for me, and you'll understand that concept quite easily. And you have the email notification that I mentioned before. So when you schedule your tasks, then this is basically the window you get. Daily, weekly, monthly. You define an execution period. That's optional. You can provide a start and end date for the execution of a task. You can define an execution time, and and you can also define multiple steps per task. Like you can have backup, unload, update statistics, shell scripts, and do multiple of those all in a row. That will be then executed. So the task steps. If you have defined a task, then you need to define the single steps of a task. And in this screenshot shows a task that has 5 steps, and the first step is update statistics, backup second, then unload, then SQL execute, and execute shell command. So multiple steps. The step types are those. So here's the screenshot of Command Center with all the different step types. You can check the database. You can do an update statistics on the database. You can back up a database, release log. You can do a SQL execute, which basically executes any SQL statement. You can do a database unload or execute shell command, which then in turn can do anything you want. Basically, you can call a batch file or an exe file, whatever you want, on operating system level. So task steps, for example, backup snapshot. If you select backup, then you have the option to choose from a backup type. In this case of the screenshot here, you see backup snapshot. Location is on server, and then you provide a path. You also provide if you want to overwrite existing files or not. So this can be easily automated, quite flexible. You can do unload database. That's the screenshot to the right now. And you also provide a unload path, and whether it's on the server or on the client and things like that. You have SQL Execute. If you select SQL Execute as a step type, then you can enter a SQL statement into the multi-line field there. The compile button to the left there lets you test that statement immediately and see if there are any SQL errors coming back from that SQL statement. So you can basically debug that SQL statement before you apply the changes and make that a defined step in your task. And the shell script looks like this: shell command, and the command itself basically is a command, a Windows command or DOS command. So basically, in this case, a batch file here. So configuring the backup steps. If you choose backup, then you have all the backup types SQLBase has. You can choose from. Those include SQLBase backup snapshot, which is a snapshot of the current database and log files. You can do backup database, which is only the database, and you can do backup log files. And you can use all these types mixed together to create a complex scenario for backing up your production database during the day or during your operation times, whenever that is. So backup on server, on client, overwrite, delete old log files before backup. All those options can be set by clicking with the mouse on those checkboxes. So you can implement a powerful automated backup strategy, and that's one of the samples that I will be doing in a few minutes, actually. Task logging. SQLBase Command Center logs all tasks, and not only tasks, but every step of a task is logged. So you see exactly when a task has been started, which step has been started when, what step has succeeded, and what steps have had errors, and what the error message of that task is. So you get a start date time, an end date time for each step. You get a success or a failure with an error description. And I will show you later how that looks like, because I will create a few errors here, and then we can see how those logs look with errors in them. Automatic notification emails if configured. So you can use this SMTP email feature to send emails to administrators if you like. So, and here we go. SQL Execute, that's a demonstration. What I want to do here is in a task, I want to move orders that have been marked as paid to a history table, and then delete the historic invoice rows from the original invoice table. So basically a database administration task that might run every night, every month, whenever that is necessary in a corporation. So let's look into that. Let me start SQLBase Command Center. First, let me see here. Okay, I have Outlook open here, so we can see if emails come in. Start SQLBase Command Center. So SQLBase Command Center basically has that tree here on the left. This part of the tree is interesting for us. Below administration, SB task is my local task database, and my task service is running. There's several tasks scheduled here. Let me show you the SQL Execute thing now that I have prepared. So basically, if there's an existing task, you can double-click on it. And the first tab here is the task definition. The name is SQL Execute. I can enter a description here. You can also switch it inactive. You choose the server. The server can have a password. Then the database, I don't have any special settings for the database, so a test connect should simply succeed here, which it does. I don't have a period defined, so it is scheduled for daily at 12:57 p.m. I have an email operator defined, which is myself, and the way I want to see emails is always. So not only on errors, but I always, if that gets executed, I want to get an email for this task. In the steps now. So what you see here is an unload database on server. So let's see in the directory backup. That's the only step that is defined here. We can go leave this here and then do a right click on that task and do an execute. Do you really want to execute? Yes. And now you see it switches to executing here. And now that task, which does an unload of the database to that directory, is executing. So let's do a refresh. Still doing something. Let's see if I did get an email. Here's the email. No, yeah. Many emails coming in at that moment. Okay, so but here's the SQLBase one. SQLBase Command Center Service Process Protocol. SQL Execute started at 17 hours 17. Step 1 started at 19:06. Here's the exact hour. So basically, it didn't even take a second to execute that. And there was no error apparently. Let's go back here now, and let's, if I refresh now, you see that this is not executing anymore. And let's have a look into that backup directory. You see that island SQL file created at 5:17 p.m. So that has been created now. Now if I go back in here and do that again, execute. So this is executing, doing the unload database task again. Should be getting an email soon. Here it is. And you see there's an error now. And it says unload file already exists. So this is quite helpful that if you get an error, you have that email. And now let's go back to SQLBase Command Center. and check the logs. And you see error executing SQL command, your unload file already exists. So that is pretty easy description here. Let's go back to the task and fix that problem. I go into steps, double click on the SQL Execute, and tell him to overwrite if the file exists. So overwrite on server. That should do the trick. No compilation errors, so the SQL statement is good. Okay. And if I execute that now, I really shouldn't get an error anymore. Remove these other things here. So here's the SQLBase email again, and as you can see, there's no error anymore. So the unload database should have worked, and we checked that. Here's the file with a 5:20 p.m. timestamp now. Now 3 minutes later, the unload succeeded because I have the overwrite in there. So now let me create a new task, a total new task to do that. What I mentioned before. Create a new task. SQL move paid invoices. That is on my server, database island, schedule daily. I schedule it backward, though it doesn't execute scheduled now, and I want to do that manually now. Martin Tates, send email always, apply. So now that task is basically defined. And now let's do two steps here. Create a new step, which is a SQL Execute. And this should be a insert into a table with a select in it. And I have prepared that statement in SQL Talk here. That's this one here. Insert into invoice history, select invoice number, etc. from invoice where status equals paid. Now this should move the paid invoices to the invoice history table. Now if I compile the statement, no compilation errors, apply, okay. Now I did move the paid invoices to a different table, and now I want to actually delete the paid invoices from the original table. I do SQL Execute, again go back here, and there should be a delete here. Delete from invoice where status equals paid. So that will clean up the invoice table, and the paid invoices will only be in the invoice history table anymore. Compiles without errors, apply, okay, apply, okay. So now I really have a new task defined here. SQL move paid invoices. Now, before we go into that, let me actually connect. Let me actually connect to the Island database in SQL Talk. Connect to Island. Okay, no, can't connect to Island. Don't know why that is now. Well, okay. Close that again. Works all day, and then when you demo it, it doesn't work anymore. Load the script file again. Okay, that works. Connected to Island. So then what I want to do now is I want to select from invoice history to show you the status. So there's 0 rows in the table invoice history, and select star from certain invoice where status equals paid. So those are the rows that actually should be moved to the other table by the task service. Let's do a commit. Don't know what isolation I am here. Okay, so now let's go to the SQLBase Command Center and do that SQL move paid invoices task. Execute that manually, and you see it's executing. And actually, we should be seeing if that has succeeded or not right here now. If I select star from invoice history now, then the invoice history table has that data, and the invoice table itself has 0 rows, which is what I would expect. So my task has succeeded, and my nightly database maintenance has worked. And that should also be confirmed now by that status email that I got from the Command Center service, which said step 1 started, finished. So there were no errors in executing that task here, which is nice. Okay, so this is for executing SQL commands. Now let's go back to the presentation quickly, and let's see what we do next. Automated shell scripts. Automated shell scripts, what I want to do is basically use the batch file or operating system interface to bring down SQLBase for a nightly disk backup. Many people don't use SQLBase for backups, but they use tape backup, or they use xcopy backup to different disk systems, for example. And to have no database files open that are being used by SQLBase itself, I'm bringing down SQLBase using a batch script, doing the backup. Actually, I'm using xcopy, and then I'm restarting SQLBase after the disk backup. And I have 2 ways of doing that. I could think of 2 ways of doing that with SQLBase Command Center. And the first one I want to show you is this one here, which uses netstop to stop the SQLBase service. So again, here it's the my server, SQLBase server, island database, scheduled daily, send email on errors. Let me change that to always. So we get an email. We got to see an email here. Then the steps are execute shell command, and this one just calls a batch file, which is myscript.batch. So this is the only step. Let me open an editor and show you myscript.batch, what that does. So this does a netstop, and then the service name of SQLBase, unify SQLBase, and my server, the server name. Then it does an xcopy of all the files in unify SQLBase program data, unify SQLBase 11.6. That's my database location. And it copies those files to C program data unify backup, which is a different directory. Could be a different file system, of course. And then several xcopy parameters there. And then after the operating file system copy, I'm doing a netstart unify SQLBase my server, which then restarts the SQLBase server itself. So quite simple, right? Okay. So there's one step which it calls a batch file. This is this one here, netstop, netstart. And if I execute this guy here, see it's executing. Bringing down SQLBase, doing the database backup, bringing back up SQLBase. And here's the protocol. Step 1. So it could do this. There's no error message here in the email that I received from Command Center. So go to the file system and see what has been created in the backup directory. So you can see that the island database at 529 which is like right now, has been backed up or has been copied over to the backup directory, and there were no problems because the files have not been open in use by SQLBase. So for the next sample, I really shall delete those backup files again, so it's easier to see what happens. Get rid of all those guys. And then I do have basically the same functionality implemented quite a bit different, which is this one. Double click on this. Okay. You know why that comes session ended abnormally? That is because I did actually stop SQLBase. So I need to go leave Command Center and also here it's with SQL Talk we got probably now a problem because that was the problem before as well. Now restart Command Center and go back to administration. And here we are. Now let's do the same thing, maybe a little bit smarter without bringing down SQLBase totally. And this one here, again, always send emails. It's the same server, same database, daily. And the really interesting thing are the steps here. So I do have 3 execute shell command steps here. And it's basically 3 backup batch files that are being called. The first one is island backup init.bat. And let's check that here, island backup init.bat. And that one basically calls SQL NT talk, which is SQL talk on DOS without a Windows interface in batch mode with a no connect option. And it passes an input file, which is islandbackup.sql. And this islandbackup.sql file will get processed, which is this file here. And this only does set server, my server, deinstall database island, and exit. So it basically deinstalls the island database so that SQLBase doesn't have the file open anymore. And then go back to Command Center. Second step is my xcopy backup script.bat. My xcopy backup script.bat, this guy here. So this one does the actual copying of the files of the island database. This one only does the island database, so don't worry about the SP tasks. So the island database is not opened by SQLBase anymore and then gets copied over. And then we call this guy here island backup outro, which is again an SQL NT talk, batch, no connect, island backup part 2.sql, which is this guy here. So set server, my server, install database island. So here we do install the database island again, so that it is available after backup again. And now go out here and try this with an execute here. You see the state changes to executing, and now it should really do the island backup. And that should be here already now. You see it. That has worked. 4, 5, 6, 7 log has happened right now. And the email notification has arrived. And all steps have finished without problems, which is quite nice. So that was the shell execute part that I wanted to demonstrate. And now let's go back to the presentation quickly. Automated backups. You can implement a powerful, secure, automated backup strategy. You can do things like backup logs during the day and then backup database after work hours. And then if during the day, for example, your server crashes, you can apply the log files to the database backup that you did nightly to quickly get back to a working state. You can also do a backup snapshot every night. And you can also do whatever you want, like unload database, have a copy of the data in text format for safety reasons. You can do update statistics automatically. And that's basically what I'm going to show you now. how you implement such a backup strategy without doing the operating system calls that I did before. So what I want to do here is to basically define 3 new tasks, one for each type of backups that SQLBase offers. So let's call that backup logs. Set the server, choose the database, test connect works, schedule it daily. I do want to get emails all the time because I want to know what's going on. And with apply, the basic definition is saved. And in the steps, I do define a new step, which is of type backup. The backup type again is for log files. Location on server because that's speedier. And then let me see the path that we're going to choose. Unify. So let's use this one, Unify Recover. Overwrite if that file exists. Okay, and that's basically that task with one step that does a backup of the log files. Now, let's execute this. Again, state changing to execute, and in the background you already see that all the log files have been backed up to that Unify Recover directory. And there's an email here telling me that that has worked. So no errors from the service. And the backup logs always needs to have a backup database as well. So let's define a task for backup database. Database server, my server, database island. So now we'll get spammed every day with my backup results, no problem. In the steps, let me define the backup, and the backup type equals database. Location equals on server, and the backup path again is in that Unify Recover directory. Overwrite existing files. Apply. Okay. Okay. So now I have the backup logs and the backup database. I can execute that backup database now. It's executing, and you noticed this file here has been created already in the recover directory. So the successful backup has been confirmed, and now it's being confirmed with that email as well. That has worked nicely. So now the third thing that you can do for backups provided by SQLBase is, again, a new task, and that is backup snapshot. Provide the server, provide the database, schedule, well, let's do monthly here. Day 1, okay. Operator, always email, apply. In the steps, there's a new step for backup. Backup type snapshot. On server for quick disk access, otherwise it would be transferred over the network, which is maybe not a good idea if you have Unify snapshot. Let me use this directory now. And again, overwrite if that file exists. And that's the backup snapshot definition that you can schedule now. And let me execute that. And you see in the background the file manager already shows that file. So the log file and the backup have been backed up. And you see that now 9.log is being backed up. So all the other logs have already been backed up into that backup directory here, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it started a new log file here. And the others have been backed up with other backups. So here's pretty much everything you can do with backup and how you do automated things with SQLBase Command Center and SQLBase. One more configuration thing for you. If you have a larger deployment of SQLBase servers in your organization, what you can do is use a SQLBase desktop, a single user database of SQLBase for the Command Center server and service. This server and service will always be up. This can trigger all tasks on central and deployed machines. And basically, this yellow box there is one machine, and this one machine has two things on it: the Command Center service and the Command Center SQLBase. And this one can then bring down the production SQLBase server if you want, and do the file system backups that you want to do, for example. And then it can also access other production SQLBase machines that need to be backed up, have updated statistics, or whatever other admin tasks you want to have. So, a quick summary. You can schedule automated unloads, loads of your database, schedule automated data updates. You can keep your database performance high using automated update statistics. You can implement a powerful automated backup strategy, and you use email notifications to keep your admins up to date on the backup processes. Okay, so there are no more questions. Then I would say thank you very much for attending this. You can always contact us at info@unify.com for more information, for questions, if you want to buy something, or visit our website at www.unify.com. Thank you very much for attending this webinar, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.